The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I sat in what was literally a converted storage room at Armstrong Investment Group. Boxes of old files lined the walls, and the desk they'd provided was actually a fold-out table. My brother David's idea of where to put his sister during the annual investment meeting. "Sorry about the accommodations," his assistant had said with fake sympathy, "but all the real offices are needed for important attendees." Important attendees. Right. Because being the founder of Phoenix Capital with its $2.8 billion in assets under management wasn't important enough for a proper office. Of course, they didn't know about Phoenix Capital. To them, I was just Sarah Armstrong, David's little sister who dabbled in investments while he climbed the corporate ladder at our father's firm. They had no idea that for the past 5 years, I'd been systematically buying shares in Armstrong Investment Group through a series of shell companies. My phone buzzed. A message from my CFO. "Final share purchase complete. We now own 51% of AIG. Board meeting in 1 hour." I smiled, straightening my deliberately understated blazer. David had always said I dressed too casually for finance. "Image is everything in this business," he'd lectured countless times. Today he'd learned just how wrong he was about everything. Another message popped up. "David this time. Hope the storage room's comfortable, sis. Don't worry, we'll wrap up the real meetings soon and then you can go back to your little investment club." Investment club. That's what he'd called Phoenix Capital when I tried to discuss potential collaboration last year. "Cute that you're running an investment club," he'd said at the family dinner, "but leave the real finance to the professionals." The professionals who had no idea their company had just been acquired by that investment club. I checked my watch, 45 minutes until the board meeting where CEO Richard Maxwell would announce the company's new majority shareholder. David, as head of acquisitions, would be there. So would our father, chairman of the board, who'd always treated my financial career as a phase I'd grow out of eventually. My phone rang. It was Marcus, my head of legal. "Everything's in place, Sarah. The paperwork's ironclad. Want me to send security up to get you out of that storage room?" "No," I replied, looking around at the dusty boxes. "Let them have their little power play. It'll make the next hour so much more interesting." A commotion outside drew my attention. Through the storage room's small window, I could see David leading a group of executives past, proudly showing off the firm's recent acquisitions. He didn't even glance at the storage room door. "And this quarter," his voice carried through the thin walls, "we're targeting smaller investment firms for acquisition. Easy pickings, really. These little boutique operations don't know what hit them until it's too late." The executives laughed. If they only knew that one of those little boutique operations had just swallowed their company whole. My tablet chimed with an email from Richard Maxwell. "Meeting in 15 minutes. The announcement will proceed as planned." They have no idea. Richard had been surprisingly easy to work with once he'd discovered who was behind the share acquisitions. Unlike my family, he'd done his homework on Phoenix Capital. He knew exactly what I'd built while they were dismissing me. Another text from David. "Board meeting starting soon. Don't wait around. This is way above your pay grade, sis. Dinner at Mom and Dad's on Sunday? You can tell us all about your little investment club." I stood up, gathering my things. The storage room had served its purpose. It was the perfect metaphor for how they'd always treated my ambitions. But in 15 minutes, everything would change. My phone buzzed one last time. "Mom, darling, David says you're at the office. How nice that they let you sit in on some meetings. Maybe you'll learn something from the professionals." Learn something? Oh, they had no idea what lessons were about to be taught. I straightened my casual blazer, checked my deliberately understated appearance in my phone's reflection, and headed toward the boardroom. Time to show them what a little investment club could do. The Armstrong Investment Group boardroom was a testament to old money and older egos. 25 leather chairs surrounded a mahogany table that probably cost more than most people's cars. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Manhattan, while oil paintings of past chairmen, including my father, watched over their domain with painted pomposity. I slipped into the room quietly, taking a seat in the back corner. David, holding court at the center of the table, didn't even notice my entrance. He was too busy explaining his latest acquisition strategy to a group of admiring junior executives. "The key is to target vulnerable firms," he was saying, straightening his Hermes tie. Small operations that don't understand real market dynamics. Like those boutique investment shops that think they can compete with established institutions. Our father entered then, his presence commanding immediate attention. At 65, Jonathan Armstrong still ruled Armstrong Investment Group with an iron fist and an unshakable belief in his own infallibility. David. He nodded approvingly at my brother before taking his seat at the head of the table. His eyes passed over me without recognition. I was just another face in the crowd, not worth the chairman's attention. My phone buzzed silently, a message from my team. Transfer complete. All voting rights secured. Phoenix Capital now controls 51.3% of AIG shares. I smiled, thinking of the storage room they'd banished me to. In about 10 minutes, that room would probably become the most infamous space in corporate history. The place where they'd stash their new boss. CEO Richard Maxwell entered last, carrying a thick folder with the Phoenix Capital logo partially visible. David, ever the brown-noser, immediately launched into his presentation. Before we begin, I'd like to discuss our acquisition targets for the next quarter. I've identified several promising small firms that... Actually, Richard interrupted, his voice carrying an edge David didn't notice. We have a more pressing matter to discuss. A change in ownership structure. The room went silent. My father leaned forward, frowning. Change in ownership? I wasn't aware of any significant share movements. That's because they were executed through multiple shell companies, Richard explained, opening his folder. Over the past 5 years, Phoenix Capital has been systematically acquiring Armstrong Investment Group shares through various subsidiaries. David laughed dismissively. Phoenix Capital? Never heard of them. Probably another one of those amateur operations. Amateur. Richard raised an eyebrow. They manage $2.8 billion in assets. And as of this morning, they own 51.3% of Armstrong Investment Group. The room erupted in chaos. My father's face turned an interesting shade of red as he snatched the documents from Richard's hands. David jumped up, his perfect tie suddenly askew. This is impossible, he shouted. Who are these people? How dare they? How dare we what? I stood up, stepping forward from my corner. Make a strategic acquisition? Isn't that what you were just bragging about, David? Targeting vulnerable firms that don't see you coming. The look on his face was worth every condescending comment he'd ever made about my little investment club. Sarah, our father's voice cracked. What are you doing here? This is a private board meeting about Phoenix Capital's acquisition of Armstrong Investment Group. I finished, walking to the front of the room. My company's acquisition, to be precise. David's mouth opened and closed like a designer-clad fish out of water. You're what? Phoenix Capital, I smiled, taking the folder from our father's limp hands. The investment firm you called a cute little club last Thanksgiving. The one Mom said was my hobby while you were doing real finance. That one. Richard stood up, addressing the stunned room. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Sarah Armstrong, founder and CEO of Phoenix Capital, and as of this morning, the majority shareholder of Armstrong Investment Group. The silence in the boardroom was delicious. Like aged wine, best savored slowly. I remained standing at the front, watching the kaleidoscope of emotions play across my family's faces. David had loosened his perfect tie, his usual smugness replaced by something approaching panic. Our father gripped the arms of his chairman's seat as if it might disappear beneath him, which technically it was about to. This is absurd, David finally sputtered. Sarah runs an investment club, not a company that just acquired your employer? I pulled up Phoenix Capital's portfolio on the room's display screen. Let's review some numbers, shall we? Since you're all about real finance. The figures that filled the screen told a story they couldn't dismiss. 5 years of strategic acquisitions. $3 billion in assets under management. A return rate that made Armstrong Investment Group's numbers look amateur. While you were putting me in storage rooms, I continued, clicking through slides, Phoenix Capital was acquiring positions in every major market sector. While you were mocking my casual approach to business, we were outperforming your professional returns by 300%. My phone buzzed, a message from Mom. Darling, why is your father calling me from the board meeting? What's happening? I showed the message to the room. Shall I tell her? Or would you like to explain how your hobby daughter just became your boss? You can't do this, our father finally found his voice. The board won't accept. The board doesn't have a choice, Richard interjected, distributing documents. The share acquisition is complete and legal. Sarah controls the majority voting rights. David lunged for the papers, his Harvard law degree finally kicking in as he searched for loopholes. There must be some regulation, some rule about family acquisitions. Like the rules you used to acquire Stevens & Co. last year? I raised an eyebrow. The hostile takeover you bragged about at Christmas dinner while explaining why my little investment club would never understand real corporate strategy. The color drained from his face. He remembered, finally, exactly what he'd revealed during that boastful monologue. You. He looked up from the papers. You used my own acquisition strategy against us. No, David. I improved it. Your approach was good but a bit obvious. Phoenix Capital developed a more sophisticated method. We should discuss it sometime, maybe in the storage room. The junior executives were trying desperately to hide their smirks. They'd all suffered under David's arrogance, watched him take credit for their work while dismissing anyone he deemed beneath him. My father stood up, straightening his shoulders. Sarah, be reasonable. This is a family company. We can work something out. Family company? I laughed. Funny how it was only about family when you were excluding me. How many times did you tell me to leave the real business to David? How many of my investment proposals did you dismiss without reading? I clicked to the next slide, a compilation of emails spanning years. Emails where they dismissed my ideas, mocked my strategies, relegated me to the margins of the family business. But here's the beautiful part, I continued. Every time you dismissed me, I bought more shares. Every condescending comment funded another acquisition. You literally paid for your own takeover with your arrogance. My phone buzzed again, my CFO this time, markets reacting to the news. Armstrong stock up 12% on announcement of Phoenix acquisition. I showed the update to the room. Look at that. The market seems to think your hobby daughter knows what she's doing. David slumped in his chair, his perfect posture finally breaking. What are you going to do? Fire everyone. Fire everyone? Oh no, David. I'm going to do something much worse. I smiled, taking the chairman's seat our father had vacated. I'm going to make you earn your position. No more nepotism, no more corner offices based on last names. Starting tomorrow, everyone in this company will be evaluated on merit alone. The room broke into spontaneous applause, quickly stifled when David glared around. But the message was clear. The era of Armstrong privilege was over. And David, I added sweetly, clean out your office. I think you'll find the storage room quite adequate for your new position as junior analyst. After all, it was good enough for your boss this morning. Our father sank back into his chair, looking decades older. All these years, while we thought you were playing at business, I was building something real, I finished. Something bigger than your outdated boys' club could imagine. And now, I gestured to the room, to the company that was now mine. Now you work for your hobby daughter. The next hour was a symphony of corporate restructuring. New board appointments. Department reorganizations. And most satisfyingly, watching David pack up his corner office while maintenance workers changed the name on the door. Sarah Armstrong, CEO and chairwoman. My phone kept buzzing with family messages. Mom, darling, please tell me this is a mistake. Aunt Patricia, your father is devastated. How could you do this to family? David, we can fight this. I have contacts. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the email from the Wall Street Journal requesting an interview. From storage room to boardroom, the silent takeover that shocked Wall Street. Perfect headline. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just succeeding, it's succeeding so spectacularly that those who dismissed you have to call you boss. The sun was setting over Manhattan when I finally left the office, casting long shadows through the boardroom windows. The oil paintings of past chairmen seemed less imposing now, their stern faces powerless against the changes I was bringing. Tomorrow the real work would begin. Merit-based promotions. Equal opportunities regardless of gender or family connections. A complete overhaul of the old boys network that had kept talents like mine in storage rooms. But tonight, Tonight I would savor the victory of the hobby daughter who became an empire builder. Because sometimes the best investment strategy isn't buying stocks or bonds. It's investing in the satisfaction of proving everyone wrong. And as for that storage room, I had plans for it. It would become the company's new innovation center, where good ideas would be heard regardless of who proposed them. After all, you never know which storage room might be hiding your next boss. 1 year later, I stood at the podium during Armstrong Investment Group's annual shareholder meeting, now rebranded as Phoenix Armstrong Global. The company's value had doubled, our client base had tripled, and the Wall Street Journal had just named me Financial CEO of the Year. In the audience, David sat in the middle rows. He'd actually proven competent once he had to work for his position. Our father had retired, though he still called weekly to offer advice that I politely declined. Mom had finally stopped asking when I would settle down and let the men handle business. Success in modern finance isn't about who you know or what family you're from, I concluded my speech. It's about innovation, merit, and recognizing talent wherever it appears, even in storage rooms. The laughter from the audience was genuine, the story of the storage room takeover having become Wall Street legend. After the meeting, I found David waiting by my office. The same office he'd once claimed I'd never understand enough to occupy. You know, he said quietly, that storage room was the biggest mistake of my life. No, I corrected him, underestimating your sister was the biggest mistake of your life. The storage room just gave me a quiet place to finalize the takeover. Because sometimes the best lessons in business don't come from Harvard Business School or family connections. They come from being underestimated by the very people who should have known better. And that storage room? It's now the most requested office in the building. After all, everyone wants to work where the revolution began.